roll call. So when your jurisdiction is called, please raise your hand or say here. City of Tucson,
Here.
City of South Tucson, Town of Marana,
Here.
Town of Oro Valley,
Here.
Town of Sahuarita, Pima County,
Here.
Pasco Yaqui tribe, Tohono O'odham Nation. Okay. It looks like we're missing someone. Irma, are you there? Oh, okay. I see you raise your hand. Okay. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and get this meeting started. By moving on to the in-kind form here. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you are paid with federal dollars, please let us know now. Okay. Hearing none, we can go ahead and move on to agenda item number 3, the presentation on the proposed fiscal year 25-29 FTA 5309 and 5339 and SCBG Flex Transit Funding Programming. So for this item, we will be reviewing the requested TIP projects for fiscal years 25 through 29 and making any adjustments needed to balance the programmed funding. In order to have these recommendations to the appropriate committees and finalized with the RTA board in January, we are expecting that the Transit Working Group provide a recommendation today. Staff has received all applications for funding allocation for the fiscal year 25 through 29 programming process. Funding levels and any needed prioritization will be discussed at this meeting. Staff will make any necessary adjustments to the funding levels prior to approval. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam to discuss more and show y'all what this looks like.
All right. Give me just 1 sec to get this loaded up here. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Can everybody see the spreadsheet okay?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Thank you so much to jurisdictions who submitted applications. I'm going to walk everybody through just the pre-work that's been done here before I turn it back over to Rio for discussion. Fiscal year 23 apportionment amounts were released earlier this year, and this table here has been updated with those amounts. Along with the ADOT letter that we got earlier this year. Thank you, Rhett, for that, about the SDBG Flex amount, which is slightly less than last year. What I've done is I've just gone ahead in the orange, I have color coded these orange. So these are actually already populated in there because they're single line items for 5337, 5339, and SDGB Flex, all related to City of Tucson. And I have a question about that, which I'll ask in a moment. Just as you peruse the rest of the sheet, any cells that are in white containing monetary values for fiscal year 25 through 29, white means that there was no change or no request for change. Yellow fields are items that are different amounts than last year. And we'll know pretty quickly that there are different amounts from last year because we're no longer in the fiscal constraint, which is required by this TIP programming process. Having that said, for City of Tucson, Rhett, I know we spoke a little bit about preventive maintenance and Sunlink related to the 5337 with the wheel replacements. We had the TIP that was being phased out, as far as I am aware, in the last exercises with the 719. There is still some 24 funds programmed for that and the tip that we'll need to discuss at another meeting since it's not on this agenda. But I wondered, do you want to do any movement with that? The total amount of the FTA apportionment is 488, roughly 488. And that's already in preventive maintenance under the maintenance category and priority. So are you looking to shift that into the 719 tip, or is it okay to keep that in the 1222 tip as it relates to the application and the request?
Thanks, Adam. I think it's fine to shift it. But I wanna defer to John Zukas, who's actually our guy over at Sunlink. Make sure he's fine with that.
Okay. What do you think, John?
It's fine with Sunlink if it's moved from, I think just to reiterate, moving it from the project name Sunlink Wheel Truing Equipment to preventive maintenance Sunlink, is that correct?
So last year, the precedent was set that the 5337 funds were already in this highlighted 1222 tip, and there was nothing in the 719 Sunlink Wheel Truing Equipment for 25 and beyond. So really, if there's no need for a change, we don't have to make a change. Like if it's okay to stay in 1222, that's probably the quicker path.
Okay, that seems fine with me because it just seems like a net neutral switch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, there was in the worksheet that City of Tucson sent over, there were differing amounts. I have defaulted to the limit of the FTA apportionment for that single line item, but that's certainly something that we can discuss. But for now, I will go ahead and just hide this so we don't have to worry about that. But yeah, it is a net neutral. I mean, we would just be moving funds from this one row to another row.
Okay, and then just real quickly, just quick observation is that that same row where it's tip ID 12.22 preventive maintenance Sunlink, that has 488,000 in it across the board. There's also the 5337 there at the bottom. Says 5337 total. Is that intended to stay like that, or is this just a reconciliation from the top numbers?
So this field down here, the assumed apportionments, is what the FTA released this year. And so it was a little bit higher than last year. So it's 488 and change. We just rounded it. And so we carried that value as an anticipated value across the next 5 years.
Yep, I got that, but on it's line 20, sorry, kind of hard to see, 27.
For the 5337.
Is that just a reconciliation of the top down?
Yes, these are yeah, thank you for asking. I should explain that. So these are just the totals by funding source that relate to the values above.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure, since it appears that we're collectively as a region in a deficit, that it wasn't being counted twice in the total, so it wasn't, impacting us in a negative fashion.
No, absolutely, and thank you for raising that point. That's a great piece to explain. Outside of that, you'll notice because the orange highlighted fields are basically, again, a single line item that gets applied all to City of Tucson tips. What we're really working with is the difference of the 5307 amounts. And so that's why this green field is highlighted here, because this is the crux of the exercise today. One other point I will make is in previous years, discussion around what happens with RTA post 26. Those amounts were reduced in last year's exercise. As we've received guidance, we should not be putting any funding into anything after the RTA until we have full knowledge that RTA Next is passed. And so we'll have to revisit tip 3312 as it relates to bus replacements once we have knowledge that RTA Next is passed and we're able to actually program those funds. Any questions about just the sheet in general, how it's set up, anything that I've mentioned so far?
Adam, this is John Zukas again. I do have a question on that since you highlighted it. And it seems very clear, but all FTA designated recipients and their associated subrecipients have to have financial capacity in order to be able to not only acquire said assets, to be able to maintain those assets over the life cycle. So how do those, if they're not going to be, if you don't have a good funding source moving forward, what's the plan of action if you're requesting funds in fiscal year 25 and 26 at a pretty substantial amount, if you don't know what the funding source may be or if it even will be there?
I'll be honest, that question is pretty high above my pay grade, but I'll give my best attempt to answer that briefly. The anticipation is that RTA Next or something similar, some version of RTA Next will pass, and so we're operating under the assumption that we will continue forward. I don't know if I have a great way to answer that question in this meeting. I'll have to defer to Rio, or maybe this is something that we can respond to offline.
Okay, thank you.
Following up on that, then if you're assuming that, you just go ahead and program the funds in this document beyond that date too.
Right. For programming funds in, and I thank you for your question, John and Steve. So for programming in, we currently cannot program in any funds past the RTA's expiration in 26. However, we do have agreements in place that say if the RTA does not get approved by the voters, then the member jurisdictions who helped fund the programs and the initial routes will receive the vehicles and all assets associated with the current RTA transit operations. So
Rio, help me understand.
Right.
You're going to assume that the RTA is successful, yet you're not going to program funds, but you're not going to program funds because the RTA is up in the air. It seems contradictory.
Right.
Why wouldn't we just program the funds, assuming it's going to be there?
Well spotted. The main thing is that as I understand it right now, we legally cannot program funds in for a voter approved initiative that has not passed. So while internally we may be, confident that RTA Next will pass, we can't program in funding. And the backup for RTA transit assets will be the jurisdictions that initially ran the services. So for Sun Shuttle, a lot of those assets would be passed on to Pima County and Marana and so on. Does that answer your question?
Not really, but that's okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this piece? And I'll turn back to Adam to help explain the rest of the sheet.
Well, I think that's just about it. For anybody who remembers last year, there are 3 line items that are not related to the city of Tucson. That's Oro Valley, with bus replacements, 2 to 3 buses a year, depending on the year. Pima County has historically had Pima County Bus Stop ADA enhancements. We didn't get a official tip application related to this line item. But the way I understand it, and anybody feel free to correct me, is that just the existing values were carried forward into the next year to kick off this programming exercise. So that's what I've done there in the absence of the tip application. If that needs to change, by all means, somebody let me know. Outside of that, I think that covers the majority of the sheet. So having that said, with these three line items being fairly low, and we're seeing some pretty substantial numbers as far as the deficit goes, I guess that'll be where the bulk of the exercise is today, is understanding from City of Tucson how we want to change some of those numbers. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rio to facilitate the exercise. I'll be kind of muted in the background, making changes as people request.
Right. Okay, thanks, Adam. So let's get started with the actual funding exercise if no one has any further questions. I'd like to point out that our priority today is to zero out line 35, as you see there, so to make this as fiscally constrained, a fiscally constrained plan. And so I'm going to turn it over to the city to talk about the 5307 funding piece here, and what we can do to bring the available funding closer to fiscally constrained.
So you're expecting the 1.998 to come out of the City of Tucson pot? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. We want to make sure that obviously all of the 53, 39, 37, and SDBG Flex funds are used up. And the 5307 funding, the majority of that funding is currently programmed for the City of Tucson. So in terms of, you know, how we're going to zero this out, we need to we need to start somewhere. Rhett, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, thanks, Rio. We've got obviously we've got some very necessary purchases we need to make as relate to our bus fleet. Our bus fleet obviously is getting old. And we've got we even still have a high number of diesel buses that we've got to remove from the fleet. The longer we keep these buses, the higher our maintenance costs are. So these purchases are very important. We've also got 10 electric buses we'll be purchasing, and we need to invest in that infrastructure at our Northwest Yard in the coming year. We'll be submitting an IFB in the next couple of months to expand the charging infrastructure for the fleet. We're also going to be purchasing replacing the remainder of our diesel bus fleet with CNG. That's not the part that's not electric. So the purchases we've got are obviously very important.
I appreciate the elaboration. Could we potentially start moving the total bus replacements from the 5307 funding source down in line 11 so that we can get closer to fiscally constrained?
So can I ask you a question? I know it probably in terms of magnitude's not a big moment, but I see Sun Shuttle, I think last year made kind of a strategic change. And instead of having the provider provide the vehicles, that RTA is now purchasing vehicles and they're going to own the fleet. Is that correct?
You know what, Steve? I actually don't have the answer to that question
Well,
off the top of my head.
I can, if you look at line 25, you're programming to buy vehicles for Sun Shuttle, which means
right.
So my question is, what's the size? Yeah, I don't know how many you got last year. There was like 450 grand or something like that. I was curious about how many you got last year, what you're proposing, how many vehicles you're proposing to get this year, and what percentage of the fleet for Sun Shuttle that is.
Right. I will ask Preston McLaughlin to go ahead and elaborate on the shuttles that we've received in the past year.
Yes. Hi. So these numbers came from a um, fleet calculation that I conducted last year for the same tip programming process, I would need to pull up the spreadsheet where I, determined how much funds are needed based on the age of our fleet, what vehicles needed to be replaced for that particular year. Let me go ahead and try to pull up that document and give you, specific numbers. I don't have that on hand right now, but
Preston,
yeah.
really quickly, to answer Steve's question, are we purchasing new buses wholesale, or are we focusing on replacing the fleet of current Sun Shuttle vehicles?
They're all replacements. They're no new vehicle expansion vehicles. They're replacement vehicles for vehicles that have exceeded their lifespan. They're
Useful life. Okay.
Useful lifespan. So again, I have the calculations and numbers on a spreadsheet somewhere, but I would need to pull that up. I don't have that on hand right now, but they're all replacement vehicles. And yeah, typically the way we purchase those is, we place those, purchases for those vehicles, a purchase order. We pay in full, and then we would just request the, federally matched amount, which is usually 80% from the city, usually through an IGA that we create. But yeah, all replacement vehicles.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers Steve's question. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, I'm just curious, as you're making the transition about the size of the fleet. So we look at the size of our fleet, we know how many vehicles are beyond their useful life, and then we program them as they hit the end of their useful life. And I was just curious, since you're starting to do that now, we don't know what the fleet is, because it's all, it's a Sun Shuttle fleet it's private. And I was just kind of curious about the size of the fleet and how many vehicles you were thinking about replacing, and then where you were on last year's project, since you had, just shy of 500 grand.
Right. Preston, how many, sorry, I'm trying to recall the question. So,
Current fleet,
yeah.
I mean, for all of our cutaways, both in, the Ajo area as well as the Tucson area, I believe is close to about 29 or 30 cutaway buses. So I believe that, every year we're needing to replace between, 3 and 5, I would say.
All right, thanks. I was just curious.
Thanks, Steve.
Hey, can I jump in real quick just to kind of bring us back a little bit? Just a couple of points. Those amounts were the amounts that were approved last year. We're not asking for any changes for those. So, the discussion around that really, is something that was already recommended for approval from last year's TWG. And just to kind of try to get us back on track a little bit, I just want to remind everybody that we do need to be fiscally constrained. The question was brought up about other jurisdictions. Even if we zeroed out other jurisdictions, we'd still be over $5 million short in 2028, for example.
Hey, Adam, I get that, and I wasn't trying to take us off agenda. I'm just curious. That's all. This is something new. I know where we have to balance. So.
Oh, I hear you for sure.
So you're going to ask questions about our vehicle replacements, and we're happy to answer them. And I know that, we're going to have to be the ones to balance the budget, but I was just curious.
Thanks, Steve. And we're happy to also, contribute in what way we can. Continue, Adam. Sorry.
No, that's just about it. I just wanted to try to keep us focused on the programming exercise at hand, and no disrespect intended, Steve. I absolutely understand where you're coming from. Having that said, I think it would be pretty clear that knowing that the FTA funds will be exhausted with all of these line items and then some, we know that it's just going to have to come from other funding sources. So with that said, again, where would we like to start making the cuts, knowing that we do need to get this down to 0?
What if we did some trading here?
I'm open to the suggestion.
Okay. To Steve's point, what if Could you guys give up some of that 817 and maybe we could give up some of that money that's in that pot for preventive maintenance?
For the preventative maintenance here, the line 8.
Line, no, line,
Oh.
sorry. It's
Oh, the 5307. Okay,
line
yeah.
12.
Line 12.
Yeah.
The 5 million here. Okay. Adam, remind me, how does this work if if this were to go through it, how would this, how do we be able to perform this?
Oh, y'all tell me the amounts and I'll make the adjustments in real time.
So, I mean, if you want us to come up with $1.9 million, I mean, we could, I mean, do you want to get it done today, or should we take this back and take a look at it and give you some revised numbers if you expect us to come up with it?
Well, we are hoping to have this prepared and approved for recommendation today for the January board meeting. We can build in a little bit of time to review, as I understand things, but it's kind of a last resort. So we're hoping to make these edits in real time.
This is Mike from Laurel Valley. You mentioned the numbers in yellow are changes. What were they?
Let me pull it up and I can show you.
Lost that Teams meeting. What's that? I can't. Right here.
So which I can tell you any of them. I mean, I have the whole sheet here. I don't know. With sharing screen, I don't know a really simple way to do that across the board, but I'd be happy to tell you any individual numbers or reference any line items.
Well, right now we're working on FY25. So obviously the new one there, electric bus charging, there's $1 million right there. But what was the 7681 for the bus replacement? We did have this balanced in the past, correct?
No, it was, I think we balanced. I think the current, always 24 was fiscally constrained, but the other future years were not, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I could be.
Yeah, I think you're right, Steve. That's how I recall it as well.
We got it. We have to balance 25.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hate to interject and disagree, but last year's programming exercise actually did constrain it across the 5-year span. And that is actually the requirement of the TIP programming, that it is constrained through at least the first 4 years. And last year, the decision was made to go ahead and finish out the exercise and constrain it through 28. So what I've pulled up on screen here is the actual agreed upon amounts that were recommended for approval. I'll remind everybody that that approval was deferred and the decision was made to, in fact, table the exercise and move it from 25 through 29. But this was the work done by this committee last year, and you'll notice that it is zeroed out along the 5307 line.
Thanks.
Adam, would you take us back to the spreadsheet?
Absolutely. Oh, I have nowhere to grab it. I am sorry, everyone.
No worries.
Give me just a second here.
I appreciate everyone's patience, and is there anything we should discuss before we see the sheet again?
Well, yeah, it would be helpful for us to take what you guys have created and then go back to kind of our drawing board internally and figure out what we can do on our end. I know you guys want to finalize it today, and I appreciate that. But our ability to look at what we've got and what's really important in order to make this thing constrained would help us greatly.
Okay. I'm being told by a little birdie in my ear that we could potentially have another transit working group meeting relatively soon, so probably early next month. If it is really mission critical that we go ahead and give y'all time to ruminate on this sheet.
Hey, Rio, there's two things. One, 25 is probably pretty easy. You know, 3 buses is $1,875,000. So that's like getting, I mean, then again, if we're gonna do the line, do it all, then we need to figure out where to take the pocket change. The bigger
Right.
issue is when you look at 28, it's 5.6 million off, and we can't. If you want to fiscally constrain that, I think we need to have a discussion about what we're gonna do.
Agreed.
So 25 is pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know that I'd want to be the responsible person to say, you know, if you're requiring it to be fiscally constrained in 28, then we may need to have a discussion about how we get there.
Yeah. Agreed. I see the largest percentage jump is in the Sun van replacements.
Yep, I see that. Yep.
And I know that that'll be, you know, so internally, I'm sure every jurisdiction will have to have a discussion about, you know, their essentially what they prefer to see. So let's.
Well, again, I suspect you're going to expect us to balance the budget, which is fine.
Yeah.
We just need to go back and revisit. I mean, we're going to have a significant portion of the fleet that needs to be replaced and figure out what we're going to do, or if there's something else we want to do. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it's probably worth mentioning that, these 4 funding sources, this doesn't involve the 5339 competitive. This isn't the 5309. Like there are other funding sources that'll have to be tapped in because just like last year, there is an upper limit on this.
Yeah, we understand that. Yeah, this is only the program, the formula funds. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so you're talking about a meeting next week, right?
Yeah, this week or the meeting there, early the meeting week thereafter.
So
Okay.
let me ask you another question. If all we had to do is balance 25, we just, we go back, we modify the numbers, we get it down to where that's zeroed out, and we just set an add of what we got. If it didn't affect anybody else, do you really need a meeting? But we get into 28, then it's a little different question, I guess.
Yeah, and based off of what I understand, we need to balance to 28.
Yep.
So if there's a large internal discussion to be had at the city about how 28 plays out, then what I would rather do instead of trying to negotiate 25 here is we would table this issue for next week. I would set up a meeting for next week. Because the agenda item does have an action to approve recommendation, I think. So if that's the case and we believe that this is the right course of action, I'll take a motion to table till next week. I see Jamie.
Yeah, hi everybody. Jamie Brown with Pima Association of Governments, and I work on the TIP development process. Just want to thank everybody for your time today. And I've shared this in previous meetings, even last year, about how this list feeds into the overall TIP development process. And this is one list of several lists that get combined. And we've been working with another subcommittee, the TIP subcommittee, on another list. There's an ADOT list as well. There's a Tucson Airport Authority list. And so that's why we're trying to move this forward. Per our TIP policies and procedures, we try to have the draft list to the Transportation Planning Committee at the December meeting. And that meeting is scheduled for December 20th. And so that's why Rio is trying to kind of keep this moving forward as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to give that explanation to you. We're looking to have Regional Council approve the FY 25 through 29 TIP at the May meeting. But prior to that, there are a number of steps that must occur, including our public outreach process. We also have technical analysis that needs to take place. And so that's why even this early on, we really need to get these project lists finalized. So thank you to the City of Tucson for your input and your willingness to go back and look at these numbers and help us get fiscal constraints. So I just wanted to add that context. Thank you, Rio.
Thanks, Jamie. Really appreciate that. So I'm willing to hear a motion to table until next week.
Are you making that motion? Or you're asking for the motion?
I'm asking for the motion.
Wait, John's got a question.
John, I see you.
Yeah, thanks, Rio. Quick question. Quickly looking through these, and I apologize for not catching this sooner, and maybe it's a non-issue, but on column K, cell 26, it just, I thought in the past we kept the 5307 funds kind of the same across the board, which would be the same as $20,031,474 across the board. And it looks like, strangely enough, fiscal year 28 has an inflated number, whereas the previous year 27 is a lower number. Is that correct? Those numbers there in that row?
Yeah, that's some. Go ahead, Adam.
Request, isn't it?
Thanks for the question, John. Yeah, the row 26 is the actual totals as the jurisdictions have applied for that funding, versus row 33, which is the reflection of the apportioned amount. And that's what we're taking the difference between those two. So this is what's requested, this is what's apportioned, and then the remainder is the difference.
Okay, gotcha. See it now. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or any other actions you want to take on this sheet? Hearing none, I'm willing to hear a motion to table.
Yes, City of Tucson asking for a motion to table this until, so we've had some time to review until next week.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second Lisa Schaefer.
Okay. Second from the town of Marana. I'm going to go ahead and ask if there's any dissent. Voting by acclamation. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next agenda item. So this is the presentation on the proposed FY 25-29 TIP transit project list for RTA funds. And for this, I'm also going to turn it over to Adam Ledford.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll get this other screen loaded up.
I want to thank all the jurisdictions here today. This is a really healthy showing for the transit working group, and our quorum is looking really robust. So I appreciate everyone taking the time and making an effort to be to these meetings.
All right, thanks everyone. Quick apology in the agenda. I believe that we listed this as TIP projections for 24 through 29. These are RTA budget items, and as we previously mentioned, we're unable to project past 2026. So again, apologies for that typo. This is for everybody who was here last year. This went pretty straightforward. We took 23 actuals. We applied a straight line 3% modifier to each of the TIP items. No MOEs changed, nothing else changed on here. It was strictly the RTA amount. Just a note as far as how the calculations were gone. We haven't received, or at least at the time that we prepared this, we hadn't received all the invoices yet. In most cases, it was about 9 out of 12 months. And so I just did some very, very simple math to move that forward to the anticipated amount for the total of fiscal year 23. Having that said, It totals pretty closely to what we were anticipating. Given that there have been slight cost rise and a little bit of inflation, we are within $500,000 of where it had been in the past. And with that straight line, 3% adjusting for inflation, we're at 30 for 24, 31 for 25, and 32 for 26. Again, this should look very, very similar to last year. This is literally a carbon copy of the exercise as it was performed then.
All right, I'll take any questions for Adam for the RTA transit project list. All right, I'm seeing none. I'll give it a couple seconds more. Don't be afraid to ask questions. All right, like Adam said, last year, this exercise went pretty easily and we got a pretty high confidence rate in the outcome. So I'll take a motion to approve recommendation for the RTA transit project list. Any motion? Motion or question or discussion?
Rio, this is Jonathan Crow. So this is the first time I've seen this. I may have missed the meeting last year because I don't recall this item at the transit working group. Sorry for the background. Jesus. Yeah, anyway.
Go ahead, continue, Jonathan. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so it's the first time I've seen it. I'm just digesting it. I don't really have any basis of which to think that this is good or bad or needs changes. So I'm really kind of at a bit of a loss as to, you know, be forwarding a formal recommendation on behalf of Pima County saying, yes, we agree to this spreadsheet.
Okay.
What can you give us a little bit? Can you give me a little bit more background as to what this is and why you're asking this group to approve it and what the implications are of this decision?
Certainly. So the table you see in front of you is the 24 to 26 projections for all RTA funding that has to do with transit. You'll see in here things like the frequency and area expansion, all of the things that we talk about in CAC as being, you know, the bulk of transit funding is in this sheet. And what we've done in the past and what we did last year is that we took actuals and compared them to what we projected to spend. And then we performed an escalation of 3% year over year to arrive at the projected funding that we're going to be spending in 24, 25, and 26. And so I'm going to turn it over to Adam to see if there's any piece that I missed here about the fundamentals of this of the RTA sheet.
Thanks, Rio. Jonathan, thank you for your question. This is for a very complicated looking spreadsheet. This is probably the most simple exercise. The recommendation for approval that you'd be giving as a jurisdiction is that you're okay with a 3% modifier serving as a nominal way to show that there would be slight cost increase year over year, but not any major funding changes. So really the purpose of this exercise is to establish that 3% was the number used that's based off actuals. From my understanding, this has been going back quite some time, but that's really the heart of it. Looks like we have a hand up from Lisa.
Yes. So I'm just curious how, I guess it's line 21 where our MOE or where it's 93,571 on so on. How does that relate to that's a cost, I assume. How does it relate to the funds that we pay for the year? So for example, this year, ours is like 114,000, almost 500. What is that in relation to that 93?
So the MOE is calculated entirely separately from this, according to just the MOE calculations worksheet, and I don't have that available in front of me. But that number wouldn't change with regards to this exercise. The only thing that's changing here is the 93,571 plus 3%, plus 3%, plus 3%, and those are based on the 23 and 22 actuals. Like it's kind of a carry forward exercise to just put that 3% into perpetuity, updating it with the most recent actuals. Your MOE is still your MOE, which is around that 104 range, as I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, ours is escalating like crazy. We're almost to 115,000. So I was just confused on why that's so high, but then it looks like expenses are a lot less. I don't know if that was my interpretation is wrong on that, but
If you have anything to add on that, I'm sorry, I haven't worked much with MOE.
No, Lisa, you're correct. This is doing our best to project into the future based off of actuals. So what we received last year in 23, or what we project we're going to receive, having all invoices closed out, versus the 3% modifier, as Adam said, year over year. And then the MOE exercise is, so the actuals inform this document, the MOE informs the actuals. That's how these get fed. Does that make sense?
maybe. I can probably chat with you offline a little bit on that.
Okay, understood. All right.
Hey Rio, can we look at these before we vote?
Yeah. I mean, so in this case, there's no adjustment needed, as far as I know, to make it a fiscally constrained version of this sheet. Can I ask why you would want to look at these?
I was agreeing with Jonathan. I don't recall this either, and but it's just me wanting to double check and make sure all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted.
Jamie, what do you think? It's put you on the spot like this.
Thank you, Rio, and thanks everybody. Yeah, I would defer to the transit team on this. It sounds like another meeting will be scheduled hopefully next week, if not soon thereafter, for the other list. And so maybe that's another time to review this and take action if transit working group members would like to have a chance to review and digest this and come back with questions. So I don't see a problem with that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So, Rhett, if I'm to hear you correctly, you want to put a motion forward to table this discussion until next week?
Correct.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second. Jonathan here.
Okay. Pima County seconds. I'm going to vote by acclamation. Anyone not in favor of the following motion?
I think Orlanthia has a hand up.
Yeah, I see Orlanthia.
I just had a quick question about the projections. Does that include the changes that for route changes and route cancellation? So that's what they're projecting will happen once those recommendations are approved?
So since it's based off of actuals for any routes that are new in the fiscal year or any routes that have changed substantially in the fiscal year, that we will not have captured that. But since our intention is to reinvest all money so we keep it basically equal on the routing side, you shouldn't see too much fluctuation between fiscal year 23 and 24.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Orlanthia. Any other hands or any dissent on the current motion on the floor? All right, hearing none, the motion passes. And I think the next line item is adjournment. So thanks, everyone.
Hey, Rio?
Yeah.
Sorry. Can you, I'm assuming you're going to send that spreadsheet out for us to look at.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Myself and Adam will get that together for you and send it to you today.
And the other spreadsheet as well from the
Yeah.
item. Okay, great.
Both RTA and FTA.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, thanks. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, a second.
Second.
All right, this meeting is adjourned at 10:56 a.m. Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rio. Thanks, everybody.